The Creative Tech Show, where your inner artist meets your inner geek. Show number 004, 5 tips for making usable content on your mobile device. Hello and good evening, friends. My name is Chris Murray, and welcome to the Creative Tech Show. Tonight, we're going to be looking at 5 tips for making usable content on your mobile device. Thanks for being here. We're going to spend the next hour diving into what it's like to create content with your mobile device. There's all different types of content that you can do. Maybe you're doing audio, maybe you're doing video, maybe you're just an Instagram fan and you're out there shooting tons of pictures. And there's lots of different aspects to creating great content, especially if you're doing this professionally for a business. So I want to share with you some of the things that I've learned about what it's like to create mobile content and shoot on the run or do video or audio locally. We've done a lot of different types of things before. So I just want to share those experiences with you. So the first tip that we're going to cover tonight is we're going to talk about having a plan. That may seem kind of obvious, but there's actually a lot of things that can go into that. Having a plan is critical. And if you don't have a plan, that is actually a plan to fail. So whether you plan specifically or don't plan, either way, that is a plan. Not having a plan is a plan to fail. So we're going to jump into that. Prepare your equipment. Tip number 2, prepare your equipment. There's lots of different aspects to the type of equipment that you're going to be using. I'm actually going to be showing some of my equipment this evening so that you can take a look at it and see if it's right for you or applicable to you. I know that there are a lot of people out there that are maybe new to creating content with their mobile device, and they think that, I have this iPhone or I have an Android phone. It's really easy to use, so I'm just going to go ahead and start creating content. Well, there's some extra things that you can get to add to your device to really help out and help yourself out and improve the quality of what it is that you're creating without a lot of extra effort. Tip number 3, avoid fumbling with your gear. I want to have a little bit of a discussion about learning your gear and what it's all about, and understanding that when you're out in the field, you don't have a lot of time to be guessing, is this set up properly? Is this the right setting? Do I have, are these thumb screws tight enough? That sort of thing. You want to be comfortable with your gear. So we're going to talk about that in depth. Understand your environment. Tip number 4, understand your environment. It's important to really realize where you're doing and what you're doing. And there's a lot of different things that go into your environment when you're producing stuff, whether you're in a crowd or things like that. We're gonna jump into that a little deeper tonight as well. And tip number 5, I'm actually hoping to hear from some people on the show tonight. Tip number 5 is your life experience, your user input for mobile production. My tip number 5 is going to be something like, learn from your mistakes. And that may seem kind of obvious that you'd want to learn from your mistakes, but it's really important to take, failure is a part of a lot of things that we do. And so we want to make sure that if we do experience those types of unfortunate failures in our production workflow, that we learn from them. So those are the 5 tips that we're going to be covering tonight. Have a plan, prepare your equipment. We're going to be taking a look at equipment. Avoid fumbling with your gear, understand your environment, and learn from your mistakes, or better yet, user input from some folks on the call tonight. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Tip number 1, have a plan. Now, if there's an assumption that I have in this entire conversation tonight, and that's that you already know that mobile production, whether it's audio, video, or imagery, is right for the type of content that you want to create for you or your client. It's important to realize that there's a difference between mobile production and big, film crews and hired, sound guys and, microphone boom operators and light people and grips and things like that. This is not what the show is about. This show is about taking what you have with you and elevating the quality of what it is that you're doing with the stuff that you have. Basically, you're the cinematographer, you're the DP, you're the director, you're the grip, you're the talent sometimes, all doing it all at once. And so that's the assumption behind this show. So tip number 1, have a plan. So you're going to this event. Maybe it's a trade show. Maybe it's a user group. Maybe it's a meetup, something like that, where you're going to be in an environment. And you know that there's going to be a certain type of people there. There's going to be a certain type of topic there. There's going to be, maybe some social activities, things like that. I would seriously consider making sure that you have a minimum of 3 to 5 shots that you know that you want to get. How do you figure out what those 3 to 5 shots are? Well, maybe you have seen a previous video from someone that you know, or maybe from a competitor, or maybe, just out there in the wild that you've seen that you really like. It's okay to mimic those ideas. I mean, obviously we're not copying, their content specifically, but the types of shots that you know that you want in your piece, make sure that you have a plan and write them down, maybe on some cards or things like that, to take with you to remind yourself that you have those types of shots. You want to seek those out, but at the same time, you want to be flexible. When you're shooting remotely in the field at social events or trade shows or meetups or things like that, that's a very dynamic, fluid situation, and things are going to arise that are going to be really interesting for you, but may derail you from the topic at hand, or at least your shot list at hand. I would encourage you to embrace that spontaneity. Go ahead, if you have a really good shot, maybe you have a 2-shot going on with someone that's, the conversation has taken a turn to a really interesting place. Go ahead and go with that. Don't cut that short. Embrace that spontaneity. Put it to work for you. And it will help tell a deeper, richer story when you get back to start editing whatever it is that you're putting together. When I say you have a shot list of 3 to 5 shots, I'm not suggesting that's the entire length of your piece, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you have, your key story points available to you. Tip number 2. Let's talk about preparing your equipment. I'm going to go ahead and open up the chair here in a few minutes. We have some people joining the room. Michael's here. Mr. Wonderful, good to see you again. Shreyas is here. Marlo Anderson joined. Daryl Dupas is here. Great, guys. I'm glad you're here with me tonight. I'm going to open up the chair here in a second, and we'll start engaging in some conversation on these tips. So tip number 2 is prepare your equipment. I can't explain or emphasize how important it is to have your equipment ready to go. And I speak from life experience when I've gotten into a situation where I failed to do something as simple as charging a battery or bringing an extra battery, frankly. A lot of stuff that is just, rookie moves. I failed to do that. So we want to make sure that your equipment is prepared. So what does that mean? Clear your storage. If you have an iPhone and you've been taking a lot of pictures, dump those pictures. You don't want to be fumbling through your iPhone to suddenly, figure out which pictures are important and which pictures aren't. Make sure your iPhone is totally clear. You want to make sure that your batteries are charged. I know that sounds really obvious, but especially if you have one of these phones that tends to drain really quickly, you'll be using it maybe for some other social activities in the night. And then when you get ready to start shooting your stuff, you realize that it's down. I highly recommend that you invest in one of these portable USB battery chargers where you charge the battery and then you plug that into your phone. They have the ones that are about the size of lipstick and one that are maybe the size of like a deck of cards. Get the one that's the size of the deck of cards. The charge lasts a lot longer. And if you're caught in a situation where you have a long shot going on, or, whenever you're running that screen on your phone and recording everything at the same time, that's really going to start chewing up some battery. So you want to make sure that you're able to keep your phone live long enough to do that. If you're using an external mic, you want to Make sure that you have mic batteries, either the AAA or the little, button size batteries. Have a couple of extra of those ready to go, always extra ones. Along with clearing out your storage on my phone, I always I have the Dropbox app installed, and I automatically set it up to upload my photos whenever I take them. So I don't really have to worry about having all these photos locally on my phone. Dropbox app is really critical to what I use when I'm doing a lot of remote stuff, because it allows me to clear stuff off without actually losing any of the stuff that I've made. Also, when you're doing production, maybe you've finished shooting or you've stopped, capturing content. What are you going to do about editing that stuff? Whether you're using some apps like Adobe Clip or Magisto or stuff like that, you want to have resources on your phone to do that. So I put all of those things in Dropbox, and then that's an easy way to get them on my phone. Make sure you have extra SD cards and have your rigs ready beforehand. So what do I mean by rigs? Well, let me show you what I mean by a rig right here. So here I've got, this is my iPhone, my portable iPhone video rig. And what it is, it's basically, a handle, and my iPhone is set up here, and it has a clamp on it, and it has a portable light up there that I can take with me wherever I go. And so when you have your rigs ready, you want to make sure that it's all set up and you're not fumbling with it, when you're on site. And that's my third tip, is avoid fumbling with your gear. You want to understand how all of this stuff actually fits together. And in order to do that, you have to practice with it. So tip number 3 is avoid fumbling your gear. Practice with your gear when it doesn't count. But the really important thing, I think, about fumbling with your gear is you don't have to have a bunch of cool stuff like this to do professional work, but you want to have the appropriate amount of gear for your level of expertise. I've seen people that are like, they're shooting like crazy, movies and things like this. They have, kind of rig cages around their iPhone, and they're doing lots of stuff. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that at all. You just need to have the appropriate amount of gear that's, leveled to your expertise. And like I said, practice with it whenever you can. Tip number 4, understand your environment. Lighting restrictions are critical to understanding when you're going to be shooting. And your environment is a lot more than just lighting, but that's probably the first consideration that I have is what kind of environment am I in for this type of mobile production? Is it mercury vapor lamps? Is it fluorescent light? Those are things that are going to affect everything that I'm shooting. Also understand if there are any rights to the venue. A lot of people don't necessarily consider that. Some places don't allow you to photograph or videotape in their environment. Now, if you're doing mobile stuff, you can probably get away with it a lot easier than if you pull out this big camera rig. That's one of the reasons why I said don't have an excess amount of camera gear. But just understand the rights for what it is and the rules of the road for the gear that you have. And then tip number 5, learn from your mistakes. Now, if you're on the clock and you're getting paid, obviously you don't want to be making a lot of mistakes with what it is that you're doing. But at the same time, it's inevitable that things will happen and you make mistakes and, you forgot this or you didn't hit that button or, make sure that you learn from that and take those things to heart and remember those for the next time. So, mistakes are a way of life, and mistakes are often the best teacher. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the chair here and just kind of expand the discussion a little bit. I'd be happy to have anybody that's in the room join me, to talk about these things. I see Daryl, you're still with us. So if you want to join in, and maybe we can get some other people to join in the room here as well and talk about these tips. I have a bunch of different things that we can talk about. I was showing gear earlier, and the gear that I was, having with my iPhone, this is a jellyfish square clamp that is just going on a simple handheld rig here and a slide-on battery-powered LED light. So this is like the minimum of a semi-professional setup that you could have with you. the thing that I really like about this is that you're come on in. I mean, it's a conversation, and we can see where it goes. He's saying he probably doesn't have much to add, but you know what? Let's have a conversation and see where we are, Daryl. So feel free to join if you want. You don't have to. I'm happy to keep going talking about some of this gear. So, when you're working with gear like this, you don't have to have a lot of expensive stuff. Um, you can get most of the stuff on Amazon, and it's ready to go. The thing I like about a handheld rig like this is that when you have your iPhone, your hands are potentially shaking. It's very loose and rough. Really, feels like a true handheld camera. Even though this is still handheld, you're going to get an extra level of stability out of this. And you're going to get another level of flexibility out of it that I really like. And that comes on the bottom of the device over here. Now, I said you don't have to spend a lot of money, and that's true. But there are some places where spending money is worth it. And this is one of those things. And that's a Manfrotto head for a tripod. And so that's my other piece of gear here. It's off camera, but I'll bring it in. So a tripod is another really good piece of equipment. And I like a Manfrotto quick release head because I can put this on a tripod and leave it. And I can quickly snap it off and be mobile very, very quickly. So it's really important to be able to have that flexibility as shots become available that you may not have expected. Remember, in tip number 1, in having a plan, it's also important to embrace the spontaneity of the situation. So if you have a situation where you don't want to be tied to a tripod, you can do it. The other thing that's really cool about having a small rig like this with your iPhone is that you can then turn the camera around, flip the camera, and kind of be in a one-person stand-up remote for doing, interviews or man on the street type interviews or things like that. So really easy to do that. And again, not a lot of money. So I have the Jellyfish Square clamp here for my phone, the Manfrotto head, pistol grip style handle. I don't think there's actually a brand name associated with it, and a battery powered LED light. Now, this light is a Best-Core, and obviously I can't, or not obviously to you, but this is a Best-Core light, and I would not recommend this brand. I don't know if anybody from the company is going to be listening to that or not. I like the promise of what this light provides. It's got some different lens covers on it for different types of light, incandescent or daylight, and it has a intensity control, which I really like. Unfortunately for this brand, the battery door is very loose, and when you get the batteries that are in there, the spring tension on the back of the door just causes it to pop off. But there's other brands that are available. So we've got some other people joining. Welcome to the show. This is the Creative Tech Show. We're talking about making usable content for your mobile device, and specifically, we've been covering 5 tips. Right now, we're just in the discussion phase. We've gone through the main parts of the tips, which are have a plan, prepare your equipment, avoid fumbling with your gear, and understand your environment and learn from your mistakes. But I'm really interested in hearing what your comments are about that. We just finished talking about some of the rigging for improving the probability of success for nice, steady video while you're in the field. This was, again, just since we had a lot of people join just within the last couple of minutes, this was a Jellyfish Square clamp for my iPhone, a pistol grip, and a portable LED light, and a tripod mount for that. Speaking of tripods, a couple of other tripods that I really like to use are from Joby. Joby makes a couple of really good ones. You've probably seen them. The seat is open, by the way. If anybody would like to join the conversation about equipment or gear or just kind of talk about it, I'm happy to join you to the conversation. Please feel free to just jump right on in. So these are Joby tripods right here. There's a larger one and a small one that is really made for mobile, smaller devices, smaller phones. This one actually you can hold a full size, a micro four thirds camera, like a Lumix or a Sony A7 or anything like that, or even a Nikon. I've put my Nikon in this as well. But these are two really invaluable pieces of equipment because the legs are flexible and adjustable, and I can wrap them around railings or tree limbs or fences or things like that. And it's really, really good to be able to do that. Also, in a pinch, if you don't have a rig set up, a pistol grip rig set up like this, these things can actually double as a handle. You can adjust the legs in such a way that you can use it as a pistol grip, and it'll give you a little bit of offset on the bottom of the tripod. So again, really easy to do. If you can invest in it, another Manfrotto. I have several Manfrotto quick release heads. They're not cheap, unfortunately, but that is money that, in my opinion, that's well spent. I think they're around $55 or something like that. So definitely worth checking out the Manfrottos for that as well. So we talked about tripods. We talked about portable tripods. Actually, this, I'm not going to hold up a huge tripod here, but, another, really good tripod, I have the Alta Pro 264T. This is a really nice one. It's relatively light. It's not a carbon fiber tripod, but it's proven to be very excellent in the field and quick and easy to set up and take down. And you can flip it around and things like that. So it's been really good for me to have in the field. I do want to talk about microphones for a little bit. Microphone, when we're talking about preparing your equipment and avoid fumbling with your gear and understanding your environment, all three of those things can be impacted by having a really good microphone on your device. And so when you have when you're preparing your equipment, you're going to want to make a selection about microphones. And there's a couple of different mics that you could choose while you're recording in the field. I have a couple of them right here. The first one is more of a studio style mic. You've probably seen a product called an iMic, which is another little adapter that goes into the back of the iPhone, and then you can plug a standard microphone into that. And I know a lot of mobile podcasters use something like that to get a really good microphone into their device. I've also had excellent luck with this is a Tascam TM-ST1, and this is a really nice condenser microphone. It has a standard jack that can plug into it, and depending on which phone you have, I haven't tested it on the iPhone 6 yet, but if you have an iPhone 5 or 5S, you're going to need an extra cable that accommodates the wiring, and this cable is only available in from one vendor that I have found. And I'll post that link to that vendor. I think it's KV cables or something like that. So this is a really important piece of equipment if you're going to be using your iPhone 5. I haven't tested it on an iPhone 6 yet, so we'll see what that's about. But the thing I really like about this microphone is, one, it's good. It's a decent quality microphone. Two, you can set it to either capture 180 degrees around the microphone or 90-degree angle, which is excellent for crowded environments. I've used this. I've done stand-up style interviews in a bar at a party and got really crystal clear audio with this microphone and using my iPhone. So it's really good. The other thing I really like about it is it comes with a cool bass. This bass is weighted. This is a very heavy bass, and so it'll sit on a table, or even, I've used it on an ottoman sitting in front of me when I was interviewing somebody, and it stays nice and steady the entire time that you're doing the interview. So this is a nice, and of course, finally, it's small. It's a nice small piece of equipment, and I really enjoy using it because it's nice and small. Of course, the best type of audio that you're probably going to get while you're out in the field is with a wireless, or a lavalier style microphone. Now, this is a wired lavalier mic. This is a simple stereo mic. It has about 15 feet of cable, so you can get a nice distance away. It's good if you're the only one that's speaking. If you're not the only one that's speaking, you're going to need something like the Tascam ST1 or something else where you can move it around, and get the other person's audio, capture the other person's audio. But having a good lavalier mic is critical, because it can save you from a lot of situations in the event that you have to do ambient audio, which means audio directly into your phone without a mic. And you're trying to do that, and you're either getting wind noise or something like that. This will save you. One tip about audio is, in the event also that you're filming. This is an audio tip, but it requires two cameras. If you're shooting video with your DSLR or your Micro Four Thirds mirrorless camera, like a Lumix or maybe the Sony or Canon, one cool trick that I've seen people do is they will use the iPhones, just the standard voice recorder app, and stick it in a short pocket or something like that, and they'll get secondary audio in the absence of having a microphone up close. So they're able to actually put the device on the person, record that, and then they'll sync it up later. So they get ambient noise, they get ambient audio from the phone, and then they also get second audio from a much closer source in the pocket. So that's great. And again, but I can't tell you how important it is to have some good microphone, things like that. This is a bit of an extreme example, but I have done this before as well. If you do have the opportunity to have two lavalier mics in the field, there's probably a lot better solutions. I stumbled across this and tried it out, and it got me out of trouble in a pinch, and I've always kept it around as kind of a good backup, is I have a little USB powered mixer, and it's a Behringer USB mixer, and it's a Xenix 302 USB mixer. Now, what this means is the mixer is powered by USB. So there is no extra power here. And previously, when I was talking about preparing your equipment on tip number 2, which is charging your batteries or maybe getting an extra battery, I had mentioned picking up one of these little lipstick or extra battery pack that's about the size of a deck of cards. That will power this mixer. So you can be completely without power on this mixer, and then you can have two two wired mics, maybe two lavalier mics or this one over here, and bring all your audio in and then patch it out into the phone or whatever device it is that you're using. So this requires a little bit of practice. I don't necessarily recommend it as my first choice for capturing audio, but in a pinch, it will work. And if anybody's out there that would like to jump in, I'd love to hear some comments about audio in the field. I have just some of my experience, but I certainly don't know it all. So I would love to hear what you all are saying. I see some people have joined us. Sean, welcome. Gord, welcome to the show. This is the Creative Tech Show. We're talking about making usable content on the mobile device. And we've gone over 5 tips that we were discussing on to improve the probability of success for capturing usable content. Having a plan, preparing your equipment, avoid fumbling with your gear, and understanding the environment, and of course, learning from your mistakes. So if anybody has that's in the room at the moment has experience with clip-on lenses, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that. That's an area that I'm considering exploring a little bit, and I've added it to my list of conversation pieces, hoping that someone will join in if they have any experience with clip-on lenses for their mobile device. I would love to hear about that. And any other rigs or mics or lights that you're currently using, definitely would be interested in that. So feel free to jump into the open seat. Lots of things to talk about. Besides actually the gear and things that we are capturing with. What about the software that you're using in the field? There's lots of different types of software that can be used to edit, capture, and edit these things. Obviously, maybe you're just using the standard video app that comes with either the iPhone or Android to capture the actual clips. But what about assembling them in the field? What types of apps are you using? There's an app, if you're an Adobe fan, and it's hard to avoid Adobe, but Adobe Clip, if you've ever used that, I've used it on a couple of different things, and it's really nice, especially if you have some of your pre-built production assets in Dropbox and you have the Dropbox app on your phone. I have the Dropbox app on my phone, and the things that I keep on there are my bumpers, maybe if I need a title slate or something like that, something that I'll use frequently, I'll have that on my phone. And I can constantly call those into Adobe Clip and edit them as I need to. I've been looking at a couple of other apps, one called Magisto and Replay and Director, things that help you assemble footage and do some of the heavy lifting for you when it comes to audio or transitions or things like that. Some of those presets are made up for you. A couple of them have a desktop download, that you can edit locally, but all of them have some type of cloud feature where, you could post it to Facebook or it does the work on the phone. So those types of things, make it easy. I like where Adobe is going with a lot of their mobile and cloud stuff, because what I do in Adobe Clip, I can actually make available as a Premiere edit when I get back to my studio and I want to edit it together. So I can do rough cuts in Adobe Clip and then bring it into Premiere and build it out a little bit more that way. When it comes to video shooting, there's a couple of different ways to shoot. There's definitely some video apps for shooting, but people, hopefully with this podcast, I don't have to say don't hold your phone vertically. I think most people know that. Periscope, I think, is the only video app that I know of that's kind of breaking that rule and getting away with it for obvious reasons for the way they're shooting their stuff. But I'm not a big fan of that. I know iPhone has some great slow-mo capabilities if you're doing that, but those are the main things. Those are the main things about shooting video. Just make sure it's steady. Make sure that you're in horizontal mode as well. So this we're about half hour into the Creative Tech Show. This is about as long as I had planned to go. So I have an open seat here. I'd love to have some people come in for the lightning round, and we can talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. Maybe you've had some good experiences on creating some mobile content, and you have some things to add to the conversation. I see Sean is still out there, and I know Daryl is still out there. You're welcome to hop in. And Daryl, if this is your first Blab, if I don't know how long you've been on Blab or not, but you're welcome to join in. I've covered everything that I want to talk about. We've been talking about the 5 tips for mobile video. All right, Daryl's decided to come on in. Avid computer user and sports fan. Hey, Daryl, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So, are you doing a lot of mobile production?
No, not at all.
Are you doing? All right. So you came to the right spot. Obviously, you want to learn about it, right?
Well, yeah. I've done one or two YouTube screencast type of things just for tutorials, like of myself.
Okay.
And very limited exposure. Back in the day when I was in university, I helped edit wedding videos and do some wedding videos. That was pretty cool.
Right. And you probably, if you say back in the day, does that mean, several years ago, a lot bigger equipment, a lot more
S-Video. Yeah, S-Video.
Oh, S-Video. That is back in the day.
Yeah. And we did have a video controller card on the computer and computer video editing software. and I really enjoyed it. And I'm kind of changing gears in my life right now. And I think sort of the self-promotion and the internet and everything, I think that, these type of skills are good to have.
Yeah, sure. I mean, most people, we were talking the other night, I was in a Blab, we were talking the other night that most people here on Blab may not even realize that to have a Blab type conversation that people are having these days would have required $250,000 or maybe more than that, really, like several $1,000,000, broadcast production truck, satellite uplinks, 20 people running all the switchers and video cameras and gears and things like that, just to have 4 people talking.
I should have cleaned my face before I came on. Be prepared. Have a clean face when you come on Blab. Just had a nice bowl of soup. Yeah, we had
the video quality on Blab isn't as good as you'd think.
We had the wall of video when I was in university, literally an entire wall of, deck stacked on deck. We had the 3 or 4 SVHS machines, and then our cameras were rather bulky and stuff. And it was quite a production to make a wedding video. And this is 25 years ago.
Yeah. It's totally a different world, and I think a lot of people don't really realize the power of what they have in their hand with these mobile devices, and if they just apply a little, course correction to the things that they're doing and a little bit more thought, they can actually get a lot better content out of their device than they think.
Yeah, I like those tripods you had.
The Jobies. Yeah, these are great. I live by these things. I've wrapped them, I said you could wrap them around tree branches or fences or whatever. I've wrapped them around like my rear view mirror in my car, if you're doing stuff like that. I mean, they're really, they're nice and tight, and I've had them a couple of years, and, these legs don't get loose, and, you can really configure them nicely, and they're obviously really great for uneven surfaces because everything is flexible and you can put them around. So, these things in conjunction with the handheld rig is really a huge time saver, because when you have the camera and the light together, and you can move quickly, and you have a lot more stuff with you. Obviously you're not going to be able to put the camera rig in your pocket and, go somewhere. I mean, you're obviously deliberately filming, but the cool thing is if you get a thing like a, 64-bit or 64 gigabit, 64 gigs of storage on your phone, and then you shoot video and you have a good uplink and you're constantly dropping to Dropbox, you can shoot all night without having to, if you're smart about how you're uploading your content, you can shoot all night about that, and it's really great. And if you have good, the front facing camera on the iPhone is really quite good. And before Blab was around, I was doing live remote, videos and interviews using the front facing camera and using the screen as the monitor, so I could see what I was doing, taking advantage of that. So. The power that we have in the palm of our hand is staggering compared to what we were doing 5 years ago.
And with the increased bandwidth on the internet, video content on websites is like, people expect it.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a web developer, and I have to know this stuff.
Right. And on Facebook, it's, video ads are like the main thing that are, that's the fastest growing type of content that people want to see on Facebook. Video ads, videos on Facebook in general.
I must be old school.
Are just taking off. It's great. And, YouTube has, I don't know if most people would know about this, but YouTube is the second most used search engine next to Google. They're using YouTube as a search engine.
Yeah, well,
more than Bing or any of these other ones.
University of YouTube. I had to
Yeah,
change
I
my
mean,
headlight on my car the other day. I didn't go to Google. I went to YouTube.
yep, exactly right, exactly right. So, it's definitely changing. So you said you're in the middle of a life change. What are you thinking about doing?
Well, I was working for 3 years in oil and gas as a labor, and I've always had an eye on computer stuff. I mean, I've built a fair number of websites over the years. I really enjoy that stuff. Um, so yeah,
Right.
I'm hoping that there's a entry level job somewhere out there for me, or who knows, maybe do a few things on my own.
hmm hmm So you do. So do you code? Do you do some HTML backend or?
I started coding when I was about 8 years old,
Oh,
like
awesome.
like in the early '80s. Yeah, I know how to code. Yes.
All right. Well, then that should be no problem. You definitely room out there for
Well,
you. So.
for me, the issue isn't so much understanding code as much as developing good work habits.
Ah, gotcha. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Great. Well, I'm going to go ahead. We can hang out and chat for a little bit. I've hit my time limit on this show, so I'm going to go ahead and hang out right there. I'm just going to go ahead and pause the recording. This has been Chris Murray with the Creative Tech Show, making usable content on your mobile device. We've been looking at 5 tips for making your life easier when doing content in the field. Tip number 1, have a plan. Tip number 2, prepare your equipment. Tip number 3, avoid fumbling with your gear. Tip number 4, understand your environment. And tip number 5, learn from your mistakes. Thanks, and join us again on the next time when we will be talking about creative tools for educators. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.